It was on an afternoon when the sky looked tired, when the sun leaned lazily behind the clouds, as if it did not want to shine anymore. I was sitting alone in the house, my old brick house in the quiet corner of Mafisa village, the house my late husband, Papa Quenzo, had built with his bare hands when we were still young and full of tomorrow. I remember wiping my kitchen counter when I heard a knock. Not the normal knock of a visitor. No. A trembling knock. A knock that sounded like it traveled a long way just to reach my door. Welcome to my channel. I share stories here and I really appreciate it if you like my stories and hit the subscribe button. Now let's jump back into story. My name is Mama Omalika, and these old bones have walked through storms that younger hearts could not survive. My voice, though cracked like the earth in Harmattan, still remembers every moment that led to the night I almost lost my life in the quietest, most unexpected way. Yes, this is a story about family. About love that decayed. About greed that grew teeth. And about the day a stranger, a simple repairman, saved the last breath I had left. It was on an afternoon when the sky looked tired, when the sun leaned lazily behind the clouds, as if it did not want to shine anymore. I was sitting alone in the house, my old brick house in the quiet corner of Mafisa village, the house my late husband, Papa Quenzo, had built with his bare hands when we were still young and full of tomorrow. I remember wiping my kitchen counter when I heard a knock. Not the normal knock of a visitor. No. A trembling knock. A knock that sounded like it traveled a long way just to reach my door. When I opened it, I found a man standing there. Dark-skinned, tall but weary, his shirt stained with dust, his hands rough like a man who works with metal and broken things. His work bag hung from his shoulder. He said, "Mama, I was called to fix your sink." But his eyes, my child, his eyes were afraid before he even entered. I did not know that fear was meant for me. I did not know my life had been counting down like a clock hidden somewhere in my own home. I did not know my 2 children. The ones I carried beneath my heart for 9 long months each. Were the ones tightening the noose. Yes, betrayal can be silent like smoke. But to understand everything, you must hear it the way I lived it, slowly, painfully, bit by bit. Because evil does not arrive suddenly. It grows. It started 3 years after Papa Quenzo died. My children returned home one by one like birds returning to an old nest. First came Thabiso, my son. Strong shoulders, quick smile, always smelling faintly of engine oil from his job at the mechanic shop. He said life in the city was expensive and he needed a place to reset. I opened my door without a second thought. He was my firstborn, after all. Then came my daughter, Lindai, whose marriage had dried up like a cracked riverbed. She came home with swollen eyes and a quiet mouth. "Just for some weeks, Ma," she said. Those weeks turned to months. My house, once quiet and echoing with the absence of my husband, became alive again with footsteps and voices. At first, my heart rejoiced. I thought, at least I am not lonely anymore. If only I knew loneliness is better than living with enemies who wear the faces of your children. I began feeling tired. Not the normal tiredness of old age. No, this one felt like something heavy was sucking the strength from my bones. I would wake up with pounding headaches, my breath shallow, my vision foggy. Sometimes I would forget small things. Where I placed my keys, whether I had eaten, what day it was. I blamed my age. When I told my children, they would say, "Ma, you worry too much. Ma, you should rest more. Ma, maybe drink more water." Their voices were sweet. Sweet like mangoes that hide rot inside. Then one morning, I woke up to find water leaking from under my bathroom tiles. A slow drip, 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 like footsteps of something sneaking into my life. I called a local plumber. I thought it would be simple. I thought life was still normal. But life, my child, does not warn you when it is about to break. When the plumber arrived, his name was Mandla, a man in his early 50s, he walked into my home with the posture of someone who had seen too much hardship in life. I showed him the bathroom. He checked the pipes, the tiles, the sink. Then he said he must see the connecting pipes in the storage room at the back. I thought nothing of it. But when he came back, his face had changed. He looked like a man who had touched something he should not have touched. His hands shook. His voice trembled like wind through dry grass. He said, "Mama, pack a small bag. Take only your important things. Leave this house gently, quietly. Do not tell your son. Do not tell your daughter." My knees weakened. I held on to the counter. I asked, "Why, my child?" And he whispered something that froze my heart. "Mama, what is leaking in this house is not water." Mandla led me into the storage room. Behind the boxes, behind the old gas cylinder, behind a wooden shelf that had not been moved in years, was a small metal device. Small like a lunchbox. Silent like a snake. Thin tubes ran from it into the ventilation ducts, directly connected to the vent that blew air into my bedroom. "Mama," Mandla whispered, "this thing releases chemicals in small, slow amounts. Too small to notice, but enough to kill someone over time." I touched the tubes. They were warm. Warm means working. Working means poisoning. Poisoning means someone installed it. Someone who lived under my roof. Someone who had access. Someone who did not want to kill me quickly. Someone who wanted me to die slowly, quietly, naturally, like an old woman who simply gave up. My heart cracked. Not broke. Cracked. Breaking is loud. Cracking is silent. The kind of pain that sits inside you like a stone. At first, I thought of strangers. A thief. A reckless worker. Some outsider. But Mandla shook his head. "This device, Mama, it is installed by someone who knows the house. Someone who knows which vent leads to your room. Someone who wants the poison to enter only your air, not the rest of the house." Then he said the words that burned my ears. "Mama, this looks like the work of someone inside your home. Inside my home. Your blood. Your babies. The milk of your body turned against you." When Mandla told me to pack my important documents, my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the keys to my cabinet. I grabbed my ID, bank card, house papers, a small bag of clothes. I wanted to cry but the tears refused to fall. My house. The house my husband built with sweat. Had become a silent grave waiting for me. I was walking down the hallway to leave when I heard a voice behind me. "Ma, why are you carrying a bag?" It was Lindau. Her hair still wet from bathing, her face calm, her robe tied loosely. Her eyes were too calm. Calm like a lake that hides a crocodile beneath. She smiled at me. A soft smile that suddenly felt dangerous. And I forced myself to smile back. Like a chicken smiling at the hyena that approaches. "I'm just going to the bank," I said. She nodded. Slowly. Too slowly. And the whole time her eyes did not leave my bag. When I stepped outside with Mandla, the air felt different. The world looked normal. Children were laughing somewhere. A bicycle passed by. Birds sang as if nothing was wrong. But inside my chest, a drum was beating. Your children. Your children. Your children. Want you dead. Mandla opened the passenger door of his old van. "Mama," he said gently, "you are not safe." And as he drove me away from the house, I watched my home shrink in the side mirror. The same home where I had cooked meals, told stories, buried my husband, raised my children. Now standing there quietly. Holding secrets like a mouth holding poison. I whispered to myself. God of my ancestors, what did I do for my own blood to want my death? My child, the way that house swallowed its own silence after Amelie collapsed into my arms, even the wind outside seemed to stop and listen. I laid her head gently on my lap, just like I used to lay her mother's when she was little. Her breath came in small, frightened bursts, like a bird trapped in a closed room. I whispered to her the way only us old women know how to whisper, with prayers folded between each word. Breathe, Ntombazane, let your chest find its courage again. Slowly, the trembling in her hands eased. But the trembling in her spirit, no, that one stayed. When she finally lifted her face to me, her eyes were wet and shining like someone who had seen a shadow standing behind her name. Not just fear, recognition. As if part of her had always expected this night to come. And that moment, my child, carried a smell, the smell of a memory that had been sealed shut for years. You see, there are things mothers hide. Not because they want to lie, but because truth sometimes grows sharper with time. Sharper than any knife. And Amelie's mother had carried one of those truths. Something that, even on her deathbed, she could not quite say. Something that now stood knocking at her daughter's life. But I had known pieces of it. Old women always know pieces. We collect them the way trees collect wind. So I stroked Amelie's hair softly and said, "My child, you must tell me what you saw." But she only shook her head, so slowly, like it weighed more than her whole body. "I don't know, Gogo," she whispered. "I just felt something watching from the walls." That sentence. Felt something watching. It slid ice down my bones, because it echoed something her mother once told me many years ago. But I could not show my fear. "No, my child. When you are the oldest in the room, you become the ground. You cannot tremble with the wind." So I pulled Amelie to her feet, holding her steady, and guided her toward the small room where the plumber had found that strange object behind the broken pipe. The house smelled faintly of wet dust and old secrets. The night outside pressed against the windows like a curious animal. The plumber, that poor soul, was sitting on the floor outside the kitchen, staring at the wall as if waiting for it to speak again. His hands, thick and strong from years of work, shook like leaves caught in a storm. He did not look at me when he spoke. "There was something inside that wall, Ma," he murmured. "Not a dead animal. Not wiring. Something else." "Describe it," I said. He swallowed hard. "It had layers. Like, someone hid a thing inside another thing. Cloth, wood, and something metal. I didn't open it. I ran." I nodded, not because his words shocked me, but because they confirmed a suspicion that had been crawling gently across my heart since he first knocked on my gate. "Amelie," I said softly, "stand behind me." The child obeyed, though I could hear her breath tighten again. I walked toward that section of the wall, the one still damp from the broken pipe. The plaster was cracked, exposing a small hollow in the brick. Inside that hollow, yes, there it was. Wrapped in old fabric, stained with something too dark to be rust, was a small bundle. Not big. Not heavy. But alive with a kind of silence that did not belong in a family home. And I recognized the cloth instantly. I had last seen it 30 years ago, folded in the trembling hands of a young woman who had just given birth to a daughter. Amelie's mother. How the past never truly dies. It simply waits for the door to open. I felt Amelie take a shaky breath behind me. "What is that, Gogo?" she whispered. "Why does it feel like I've seen it before?" "Because blood remembers. Even when the mind forgets." But I was not ready to open the bundle, not yet. Some things must be unwrapped with prayer. With strength. With company of ancestors. So I turned to them both. "You two must sit," I said. "This night has opened something deep." The plumber sat immediately, grateful for something solid to obey. Amelie hesitated, her hand gripping the back of a chair like it was the only truth left in the room. "Gogo, is this about Mama?" Her voice cracked on the last word, and that crack was deeper than fear. It was loss. Old loss. Loss that never learned to sleep. "Yes," I whispered. "It is about her. And it is about you." Her knees gave up before her mind could protest, and she sat slowly, eyes fixed on the shrouded bundle in my hands. Go, what did Mama hide in the walls? I looked at my granddaughter, the last seed of a woman whose story had been cut open too early, and I felt the weight of what I was about to reveal. My child, I said quietly, your mother hid the truth of your birth. And she hid the proof of it in these walls. Amelie gasped, a soft, fragile sound that felt like a life breaking open. But I was not finished. And now, the past has come to collect what it once left behind. When I said those words, the room changed. Not by light, not by sound, but by breath. As if the very air pulled its chest tight, bracing for what was about to rise from the dark. Amelie stared at me with eyes that trembled at the edges, like water fighting not to spill. The plumber, poor boy, looked as though he wished he could crawl back into the very walls he had opened. But I had lived long enough to know that when the past knocks, it never comes empty-handed. It comes carrying its unfinished business. And that business, tonight, had a name. I stepped closer to the table and placed the small, wrapped bundle before us. Its fabric looked older now, as though time had been secretly chewing it from the inside. Threads frayed like exhausted veins. A faint, metallic scent hovered around it, not sharp enough to be blood, but too cold to be dust. Amelie swallowed. Go, she whispered, what truth did Mama hide from me? Her voice. So thin. So young. So full of a pain she had inherited without consent. I reached out and held her hand, warm, trembling, desperate for something steady. And I let my own old breath rise slowly from my chest. My child, I said softly, your mother loved you. More than breath, more than bone. Everything she hid because she wanted you to grow without this shadow. Amelie shook her head, tears building behind her lashes. But why hide anything at all? Why put something in the walls? I looked at the bundle again. Because some truths, my child, are not just heavy. They are dangerous. But Amelie did not need riddles now. She needed her grandmother to speak plain. So I began. Before you were born, your mother was not the woman you remember. No, she carried a fear inside her. A fear shaped like a man. Amelie's breath caught. A man? Not anger. Not suspicion. But something worse, recognition. Her spirit already knew the story that her mind had not yet heard. I nodded. Yes. A man. A man who claimed to love her, but whose love grew teeth. The plumber looked down, ashamed on behalf of all men who walk the earth with careless fists. Your mother, I continued, escaped him before you were born. She came to me, bruised in places she hid under long sleeves, frightened in ways she tried to smile through. I felt my hands shake slightly as I remembered that night, her silhouette on my doorstep, thin as desperation, clutching her belly with a protectiveness that broke my heart. She told me she had run. She told me she would never let that man find her child. Amelie raised her hand to her mouth. Go, that man wasn't my father? Ah, that question. The one she had feared her whole life without ever putting it into words. I closed my eyes, just for a moment, to gather the strength of all the women in our bloodline. No, my child, I whispered. He was not your father. But he believed he had a claim to you. Amelie's breath shattered. And the bundle on the table. It seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. You see, that man did not let go. He followed your mother for years, appearing and disappearing like a sickness that never fully leaves. She changed homes. She changed jobs. She even changed her name once. But he always found a trace. Always. Until one day, your mother did something desperate, something only a terrified mother would do. She created a false trail. A lie so convincing that the man would believe you did not survive your birth. Amelie gasped, covering her mouth. Yes, my child, I said. Your mother faked your death when you were only 2 weeks old. Her shoulders collapsed. She told him you had died, I continued, and she hid the proof of that lie in this wall, wrapped inside this cloth. The plumber crossed himself. Emily seemed to fold into herself, absorbing the weight of what she had just inherited. But, Gogo, if he thought I was dead, why does this thing matter now? I looked at her. Truly looked. Because someone has been searching again. And the plumber's voice cracked into the tight silence. Ma, when I found that thing behind the wall, I also found something else. Emily lifted her head sharply. What? She breathed. He hesitated, his face paling, his lips trembling. There was fresh handwriting on the inside of the wall. A chill crept down my spine. Fresh? I asked. He nodded. Yes, Ma. Not old. Not dusty. Not from years ago. Fresh. Like someone opened that wall, not long before me. Emily's hands flew to her face. I whispered a prayer under my breath. Because I already knew what that meant. Someone else had been inside that wall. Someone who knew where to look. Someone who had come back to finish what the past left undone. And the bundle on the table now felt less like a memory. And more like a warning. My child, I whispered, someone has returned for the truth. Emily trembled. Gogo, is he alive? I did not answer. Because the house answered for me. A slow, dragging sound echoed from somewhere deep inside the hallway. Not footsteps. No. Something worse. Something searching. Something patient. Emily's hand clutched my arm. Gogo. I squeezed her fingers. My child, stay behind me. Because the past had just stepped into the house. When that sound traveled through the hallway, it carried a weight no human foot should carry. It was slow, deliberate, the kind of sound made by someone who no longer hurries, because they already know exactly what they are looking for. Emily's breath hitched, sharp and thin. The plumber pressed his back to the wall, eyes darting toward the front door as if planning the fastest escape. But me. I simply stood still. Not because I was brave. No, my child. Because age teaches you something very important. Sometimes the only way to survive a storm is to let it reveal what it wants. The sound grew louder. A soft scrape. A dragging weight. A shift of something pressing against the wooden floorboards. Too heavy to be a rat. Too intentional to be the wind. Too steady to be imagination. I rested a hand over the wrapped bundle on the table. Its presence burned against my palm. Secrets always get warm when danger walks near them. Emily, I whispered, do not move. But she already had tears slipping down her cheeks. Not from fear alone. From understanding. From the realization that something connected to her mother's suffering. Something that should have stayed buried. Had followed her into adulthood. The plumber, voice thin as paper, whispered. Ma, is someone in the house? I did not look at him when I answered. No. Not someone. The dragging stopped. Then a soft, careful, tapping began. Tap. 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 Like knuckles brushing the wall. Like fingers tracing the rooms to remember where they once belonged. We all held our breath. Tap, tap. The last one was sharp, too sharp. Something had found the kitchen door. Emily grabbed my arm. Gogo, please, tell me what's happening. I squeezed her hand, steadying her. When your mother hid the truth, she did not hide it from the world. She hid it from one man. A man who believed you belonged to him. But why would he be here? After all these years? Because lies, I said softly, have a way of unraveling when the world least expects it. The room trembled as the kitchen door handle twitched. Just once. Not enough to open the door. Just enough to say, I am here. The plumber gasped, crossing himself again. Emily pressed closer behind me, her breath shaking against my shoulder. Go, she whispered, is he inside the house? My voice stayed calm, because panic is useless when danger already knows your name. No, my child. He is not inside. The handle twitched again. Slower. More controlled. Like a hand testing the metal, remembering its texture. But the house remembers him, I said softly. Emily shivered. The plumber's eyes widened a little too much. What do we do? He whispered. I looked at the shadow beneath the kitchen door, wide, unmoving, heavy like something crouched on the other side. We wait. The plumber shook his head violently. No, Ma, we should run. We should lock windows. Call someone. Call anyone. Running, I said, will teach him you are prey. And I will not teach that lesson. The handle rattled a third time. Harder. This one shook the hinges. Emily flinched. The plumber stumbled back. My child, sometimes fear grows so large that the single most dangerous thing in the room becomes our imagination. So I stepped forward, toward the door. Emily grabbed my arm. Go. Don't. It is all right, Ntombazane, I whispered. You are not alone tonight. And a truth that has slept for 25 years deserves to wake. I reached the kitchen door slowly. Placed my hand on the handle. The metal felt cold enough to bite my skin. And then, in a voice older than fear itself, I said, if you have come for what you believe you lost, you will not find it here. Silence. Thick. Pressing. Hungry. Emily covered her mouth. The plumber stopped breathing entirely. I could feel the presence on the other side shift, not away, not closer, but as if listening. You abandoned your right, I whispered through the wood. The moment you turned love into a weapon. Something thudded lightly, like a forehead resting against the door. I closed my eyes. Because that sound, that soft, desperate sound, did not belong to a monster. It belonged to a broken man. A dangerous man, yes. But one whose darkness had grown from the soil of his own pain. Then, he exhaled. A long, trembling breath that carried years of loss. Years of anger. Years of searching. And then the sound shifted. Not away. Down. As if he were lowering himself to the floor on the other side. Emily whispered shakily. Go, what is he doing? I opened my eyes. He is sitting, I said. And he is waiting. Waiting for what? For the truth, I answered. I stepped back, slowly. The house fell into a thick, charged silence. Then the plumber, voice trembling, murmured. Ma, maybe we should call the police. I looked at him. No police will understand this story. No police can carry this kind of history. Emily's tears spilled over. Go, what happens now? I looked at the bundle on the table, the one wrapped in old fabric, the one pulsing with every heartbeat in the room. What happens now, I said softly, is that we open the past. Because until we did, the man sitting on the other side of that door would never leave. The moment I touched that bundle again, the room grew so still that even the dust in the air seemed to pause. Emily wiped her tears with the back of her trembling hand. The plumber stood pressed against the wall like a frightened animal, unsure whether to run or pray. And behind the kitchen door, the presence did not move. It simply waited. Waiting is the language of old wounds, my child. A wound waits to be cleaned. A hunger waits to be fed. A ghost waits to be acknowledged. And this one had waited too long. I placed the bundle gently on my lap, as though it were a newborn child instead of a piece of the past. Emily whispered, barely audible. Go, please, tell me what's inside it. Her voice carried the softness of someone who already feared the answer. I stroked the fabric, thin, fragile, still smelling faintly of her mother's skin from decades ago. "This," I said quietly, "is the lie that saved your life." Amelie's eyes widened, glistening. The plumber stepped closer, curiosity and terror wrestling in his chest. I unwrapped the first layer. The worn cloth faded with age. Then another layer. Darker, stitched by hand with thread too fine for old fingers. Then another. A strip of leather your mother cut from an old handbag in her desperation. Inside, nestled gently like a heart carefully hidden, was a small wooden box. Carved with patterns I recognized instantly. Patterns from a village far from here. Patterns from his people. The man behind the door. Amelie's breath broke. "Gogo, what is that?" I lifted the box. It was light, fragile, and carried a faint scent of camphor and smoke, the scent of places where stories are buried, not told. "This," I whispered, "is your mother's protection. And also her curse." Amelie swallowed hard. "Open it," she whispered. But before I could answer, a soft sound came from the door. Not a knock. Not a drag. A breath. Heavy, shaking. Like someone forcing themselves to relive a memory they long tried to forget. Amelie flinched. The plumber's knees weakened. But I kept my hand on the box. "My child," I said to Amelie, "before I open this, you must know. What is inside will change the shape of your heart. It will not make you hate your mother. But it will make you understand the war she lived through." Amelie nodded, tears already falling. "I'm ready, Gogo," she whispered. "I want to know who I am." Ah, that sentence. The most powerful sentence a young woman can speak. It can open doors the world wants to keep shut. I opened the wooden box. Inside lay a birth certificate, a photograph, a lock of hair, and a single, folded letter, asterisk asterisk. Amelie gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth, trembling like a leaf in a storm. The birth certificate was official, stamped, and old. But the father's name had been scratched out so violently the paper tore. The photograph. A young woman, her mother, holding a newborn wrapped in a patterned blanket. But the photo was taken in a hospital far from the one Amelie had been told she was born in. Amelie's voice cracked. That's me?" Her fingers hovered over the photo like they feared it might burn her. "Yes. Taken before your mother ran." She stared, breath shaking. "But, why hide this?" I pointed to the letter. The one sealed and never opened. "Because this," I said softly, "is the truth your mother feared." The plumber spoke softly, as though afraid of the paper. "Open the letter, Ma." I nodded, though my hands grew heavier with every passing second. The presence behind the door, still unmoving, felt as though it leaned closer to listen. I unfolded the paper slowly. The handwriting was unmistakably your mother's. Small, neat, but trembling in places where the ink thickened. I took a slow breath and began to read aloud. "To my daughter. If this letter is ever found, it means he has returned. If he returns, it means he discovered the truth I have carried alone. You are not his. You were never his. Your real father is someone I loved. Someone I lost. Someone he hated enough to kill." Amelie's entire body shook. The plumber's mouth fell open. I continued. "I lied to save you. He believed you were his child. And when he realized I planned to leave him, he threatened to take you away forever. I ran. And when he followed, I told him you had died. I created a certificate. I forged a grave. I buried myself in guilt. But you lived. You grew. You survived." By the time I finished those lines, Emily was sobbing. Not loud, no. Not wild. But softly, deeply, the kind of crying that melts a person from the inside out. I placed my hand on her back. My child, your mother was a warrior. She shook, choking out. Then what does he want now? If I'm not his child? Why would he come back? Ah. The question I feared. I picked up the last item in the box. A tiny metal tag, the kind hospitals tie to newborns. And it had a number. A date. A name. The name of her real father. One the man behind the door must have found at last. I held the tag out to her. Because, my child, you are the last living piece of the man he destroyed. Amelie's sob broke into a frightened gasp. The presence behind the door shifted again. But not like a predator. No. This time, it sounded like a man breaking open. A soft thud. A quiet sob. A pain years old. Amelie looked at the door with wide, wet eyes. Gogo, is he here to kill me? I shook my head. No, my child. Then what does he want? I looked toward the door. Toward the man who once believed he owned a child. That was never his. He wants forgiveness, I whispered. And forgiveness is the heaviest thing a human heart can offer. The silence that followed was deeper than fear. Because forgiveness is the sharpest kind of truth. Endings do not arrive like doors slamming shut. No. They come like dusk, slowly, gently, with shadows stretching until they touch everything you once believed was solid. That night, as the truth sat between us like a candle trembling in the wind, the house grew unbearably quiet. Amelie held the metal newborn tag in her trembling fingers. The name of her real father etched into it like a whisper from a grave. Her tears fell silently onto her knees. The plumber stood near the wall. Hands clenched. Terrified but unable to look away. A witness to a story not his. Yet too human to ignore. And behind the kitchen door, the man who had haunted Amelie's mother for decades still sat on the floor. Silent. Waiting. Unmoving. Like guilt carved into stone. I could feel his breath through the wood. Not the breath of a monster. No. But the ragged breathing of a man. Standing on the final edge. Of a life built on mistakes he could no longer outrun. I placed my hand over Amelie's. My child, I whispered, forgiveness is not a gift for him. It is a release for you. A key that frees your spirit from the cage of fear you never asked to be born into. Amelie sobbed softly. But Gogo, what am I supposed to say to him? What do I owe him? I shook my head. You owe him nothing. Not comfort. Not kindness. Not understanding. You owe only the truth. Her breath shuddered. And what truth is that? She whispered. That you survived, I said softly. That your mother's love was greater than his violence. And that your life is not shaped by the darkness that chased you, but by the light that protected you. Amelie wiped her face with the back of her sleeve. Her tears slowed. Her breathing steadied. And then, she did something brave. Something her mother never had the chance to do. She stood. Her knees shook, but her spine stayed straight. She walked toward the kitchen door. With steps that belonged to a woman stepping out of the past. And into herself. Gogo, come with me, she whispered. I rose. My bones creaked. But my spirit stood tall beside hers. The plumber, too frightened to follow, pressed himself into the corner. I placed my hand gently on the kitchen door. Amelie, I whispered, whatever you say it with the strength of your mother. She is here tonight. Amelie nodded, tears sliding again, but these tears were different. Not fear. Not confusion. But a quiet courage. I turned the handle. Slowly. 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 The door opened with a soft groan. And there he was. Sitting on the floor. Back bent. Head lowered. Hands clasped together tightly. As if trying to hold on to the last thread of his shrinking world. He looked older than I remembered. Gray threaded through his hair. Wrinkles carved like rivers down his face. Eyes swollen with sleepless years. He did not raise his head. He spoke first. In a voice that broke like dry wood underfoot. I searched for a grave, he whispered. For years. I searched for a grave. Emily froze. Her breath caught. He continued. When I found out the grave was a lie. I should have been angry. But I felt relief. His voice trembled. Because it meant she lived. It meant you lived. A tear fell from his eye, heavy, slow, honest. He still did not look up. I was a young man full of storms, he whispered. I hurt your mother. I hurt myself. And I thought I had a right to everything I touched. He swallowed. But when she ran. And when she told me you had died. I thought God was punishing me for the man I had become. Silence filled the hallway. Deep. Bleeding. Human. Finally, Emily spoke. Her voice was steady, but soft. A voice carved from pain but shaped by her mother's strength. You don't get to claim my life now, she whispered. The man flinched. Still did not lift his head. I know, he said. I came to see if you were real. Not to take you. Not to own you. Just to know. That I didn't destroy everything. Emily wiped her tears. You didn't create me, she said. And you didn't save me. Mama did that. So if you came here looking for forgiveness. She took a deep breath. I don't have it. His shoulders collapsed. Fully. Completely. But before the darkness in him could swallow him whole. She finished. But I will not hate you. He choked on a gasp. Emily continued. I will not carry you with me. I will not let your shadow follow me anymore. I am not your blood. I am not your mistake. I am not your punishment. Her voice rose. Not loud. But bright. I am my mother's daughter. Silence. A holy silence. The kind that heals. The man finally lifted his head. His eyes were red, swollen, drowning in regret. He whispered. Thank you. And he stood. Slowly. Stiffly. Like a man rising from a lifetime of self-inflicted chains. He walked past us. Past the cracked wall. Past the plumber frozen in fear. Past the table where the box lay open like a wound finally allowed to breathe. At the doorway, he paused. Without turning, he said. She loved you. More than her own life. More than her fear of me. More than anything I ever understood. Then he stepped outside. And the night swallowed him. He did not look back. He did not threaten. He did not beg. He simply left. Like a ghost finally deciding to rest. Emily's legs gave out beneath her. And she sank into my arms. Crying the softest cry I had ever heard from her. A cry not of fear. Not of pain. But of release. I held her close. Letting her tears wash the last remnants of a past that was never hers to carry. My child, I whispered into her hair. You have broken a circle tonight. Your mother would be proud. She clung to me, sobbing quietly. And in that moment, with the house still trembling from all it had witnessed, I felt her spirit open. A flower finally given room to bloom. The plumber stepped forward. Uncertain, overwhelmed. Ma, is it over? I looked at him. At Amelie. At the cracked wall. The open box. The empty doorway. And I nodded. Yes, I whispered. It is over. Outside, the wind shifted. Gentle, warm. As if the night itself exhaled. Amelie lifted her head from my chest. Eyes swollen but shining. Go, what now? I cupped her face in my hands. Now, my child, I said softly. You live the life your mother saved for you. The life she dreamed for you. The life no man can ever claim again. She closed her eyes. And leaned into my palms. Peace. Real peace. Slowly returned to her breath. The past had finally been opened. Faced. Released. And as I held her, I whispered the last truth she needed. Your story begins now.